Explore Poirot's Casebook Audio, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot cracks cases in immersive audio stories. In the shadowed elegance of Torres Hall, a scream pierces the night. Lawrence Vane lies dead, stabbed in a locked library, a priceless Cretan Bull statuette beside him. Was it jealousy, greed, or a secret worth killing for? Hercule Poirot, the brilliant Belgian detective, steps into a web of lies, where every guest hides a motive. A lost earring, a hidden key, a cryptic ledger. Who crafted this perfect crime? Unravel the suspense in Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, Taurus Terror. A mystery of betrayal and deception that will keep you guessing until the shocking final reveal. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Torres Hall. The late September sun cast long golden shadows across the manicured lawns of Torres Hall, a sprawling Georgian estate nestled in the heart of the Devon countryside. The house, with its ivy-clad walls and towering chimneys, stood as a monument to the wealth and ambition of the late Sir Reginald Ashford, whose fortune in shipping had built this grand retreat. Now, under the stewardship of his widow, Lady Beatrice Ashford, the hall was hosting a weekend gathering, a seemingly innocuous affair to celebrate the engagement of their only daughter, Miss Clara Ashford, to Mr. Lawrence Vane, a dashing but enigmatic young barrister from London. The air was crisp, scented with the faint musk of autumn leaves, as guests arrived in polished motor cars, their tires crunching on the gravel drive. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal friend of Hercule Poirot, stood at the edge of the terrace, his gaze drifting over the arriving party. He adjusted his tie, feeling a touch out of place among the glittering assembly of aristocrats, artists, and intellectuals. Hastings had been invited at Clara's insistence, her fondness for his easy charm and war stories having secured him a place in her circle. Yet, as he observed the guests, his nervous demeanor suggested a secret she was reluctant to share. The afternoon passed in a haze of champagne and polite conversation, but Hastings could not shake a sense of disquiet. Perhaps it was the way Lady Beatrice's smile tightened when Vane spoke, or the fleeting look of anger that crossed Grayson's face when Dr. Warrender mentioned a rare Cretan Bull statuette recently acquired by Sir Reginald before his death. The statuette, a bronze relic of exquisite craftsmanship, was said to be the centerpiece of the weekend's festivities, to be unveiled at dinner that evening. As dusk fell, the guests gathered in the grand dining room, its walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced Ashfords. The table gleamed with silver and crystal, and the scent of roasted pheasant filled the air. Lady Beatrice rose to speak, her voice clear and authoritative. "My dear friends," she began, "we are here to celebrate love and legacy. Clara and Lawrence's engagement marks a new chapter for Torres Hall. And tonight, we honor my late husband's passion for antiquities with the unveiling of his final acquisition, the Cretan Bull." A murmur of anticipation rippled through the room. Dr. Warrender's eyes gleamed, and Miss Trent's fingers tightened around her wineglass. Hastings, seated near the end of the table, glanced at Vane, who seemed distracted, his gaze fixed on the heavy oak doors at the far end of the room. The butler, Mr. Phelps, a stoic man with a military bearing, entered with a velvet-lined case. He placed it before Lady Beatrice, who lifted the lid to reveal the statuette. A bronze bull, no larger than a man's hand, its horns curved menacingly, its eyes inlaid with amber that seemed to glow in the candlelight. The guests leaned forward, captivated. But Hastings noticed something odd. A faint scratch on the bull's flank beside him, its amber eyes glinting in the lamplight, as if mocking the scene. Lady Beatrice clutched Clara, who was trembling violently. Dr. Warrender knelt beside Vane, his fingers searching for a pulse. "He's dead," he said grimly. "Stabbed, I'd wager, though the weapon's nowhere to be seen." Mrs. Carver let out a theatrical gasp, while Grayson muttered something about "damned bad luck." Miss Trent stood frozen, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Phelps, the butler, hovered at the edge of the room, his expression unreadable. Hastings stepped back, his mind racing. The library windows were locked, the only door leading to the hall where the guests had been moments before. A murder, here, in this closed circle of wealth and refinement. It was unthinkable, yet undeniable. As the guests began to murmur, their voices tinged with fear and suspicion, Hastings knew only one man could unravel this tangle of motives and secrets. He slipped away to the telephone in the hall, his fingers trembling as he dialed a number he knew by heart. "Monsieur Poirot," he said when the familiar voice answered. "I fear we have need of your little gray cells at Taurus Hall. A man is dead, and I suspect this is only the beginning." Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The library at Taurus Hall was a cavern of shadows, its high shelves laden with leather-bound tomes that seemed to absorb the flickering light of the chandelier. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and wax polish, now tainted by the metallic tang of blood. Lawrence Vane's body lay where it had fallen, his lifeless form a stark contrast to the opulence around him. The Cretan Bull statuette rested inches from his outstretched hand, its amber eyes catching the lamplight with an unsettling gleam. "The guests, then," he said, his voice echoing in the tense silence. "No one leaves this room until we've got the facts straight. Name, time, and where you were when the scream was heard. Let's have it." Lady Beatrice drew herself up, her voice steady despite the strain in her eyes. "This is outrageous, Sergeant. We are all respectable people, and this tragedy has shaken us deeply. Surely you don't suspect—" "I suspect everyone until I don't, my lady," Brooks interrupted, scribbling in his notebook. "Now, let's start with you." One by one, the guests recounted their movements. Dinner had ended at precisely 9:45 p.m., as confirmed by the grandfather clock in the dining room. Most had lingered over coffee, save for Hastings, who had stepped onto the terrace at approximately 9:50 p.m. The scream, all agreed, had come at 9:55 p.m. Lady Beatrice and Clara had been in the drawing room, discussing wedding plans. Dr. Warrender claimed to have been in the billiard room, examining a map of Crete. Mrs. Carver said she had retired to the conservatory to make notes for her next novel. Grayson insisted he had been in the smoking room, alone, enjoying a cigar. Miss Trent, her voice barely above a whisper, said she had gone to her room to fetch a shawl, but had paused in the hall to admire a portrait. Phelps, the butler, reported he had been in the pantry, polishing silver. "And Mr. Vane?" Sergeant Brooks pressed, his pencil hovering. "When did anyone last see him alive?" Clara's voice broke as she spoke. He excused himself after dessert around 9:30. He said he wanted to fetch a book from the library. I thought nothing of it. He often liked to read before bed. Hastings frowned, recalling Vane's distracted demeanor at dinner. Had he been planning to meet someone in the library? The thought gnawed at him, but he held his tongue, knowing Poirot would prefer to gather such observations in dim light. Hastings made a mental note, certain Poirot would find it significant. The sound of tires on gravel announced the arrival of Hercule Poirot. The library door swung open, and there he stood, small, immaculate, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache perfectly waxed. His green eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the room with calm authority. "Bonsoir, mes amis," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Captain Hastings, you have summoned me to a most unfortunate scene. A murder, n'est-ce pas?" Sergeant Brooks bristled at the interruption. "And who might you be, sir?" "Hercule Poirot," he replied, bowing slightly. "A detective, and one who, I assure you, will bring order to this chaos. Now, if you please, tell me everything." Brooks, clearly unimpressed, began a gruff summary, but Poirot raised a hand. "Non, non, Sergeant. I will hear it from the witnesses myself in due course. First, I must see the body." He approached Vane's form with the precision of a surgeon, his eyes darting over every detail. The position of the arms, the angle of the wound, the statuette's proximity. He paused at the clenched hand, his head tilting slightly. "Curieux," he murmured, then turned to the guests. "No one has touched anything, I trust." A chorus of shaken heads answered him. Poirot nodded, satisfied, and began to pace the room, his hands clasped behind his back. "This library," he said almost to himself. "It is a stage, and we are all players. But who, I wonder, has written the script?" Hastings watched, marveling at Poirot's calm. The man's presence seemed to steady the room, though the guests' unease remained palpable. Clara stifled a sob, and Lady Beatrice's grip on her daughter tightened. Mrs. Carver's pen scratched faintly in her notebook, a detail, "Mon ami. This is no crime of passion, but a puzzle, carefully constructed, and Hercule Poirot will solve it, using the little gray cells. Come, we have much to do." Chapter 3. The Arrival of Poirot. The morning after Lawrence Vane's murder dawned gray and heavy, the sky over Torres Hall draped in a shroud of mist that clung to the estate's rolling lawns. Inside, the atmosphere was no less oppressive. The guests, summoned to the drawing room, sat in uneasy silence, their faces etched with fatigue and suspicion. The grandeur of the room, its velvet drapes, polished mahogany, and crystal chandelier, did little to dispel the chill that had settled over the household. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his diminutive figure commanding attention, despite the somber mood. His black suit was immaculate, his mustache a perfect curve, and his green eyes sparkled with quiet intensity. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near the fireplace, marveled at his friend's composure. While the others fidgeted or avoided eye contact, Poirot seemed to thrive on the tension, as if it were a puzzle piece he could turn over in his mind. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured. "A tragedy has occurred in this house, and it is my task, nay, my duty, to bring clarity to this darkness. Monsieur Vane has been taken from us, and the truth, it hides among you. But fear not, for Hercule Poirot sees what others do not." Lady Beatrice Ashford, seated rigidly on a brocade sofa, fixed Poirot with a steely gaze. "Mr. Poirot, I trust you understand the delicacy of this situation. My daughter is grieving, and we are all shaken. I hope your methods will be discreet." Poirot inclined his head. "Discretion, madame, is my hallmark. But truth, it is not always—" He went to the library. He seemed distracted. He mentioned something about a letter he needed to write, but he wouldn't say more. A letter, Poirot repeated, his eyes narrowing. Curieux. And where is this letter now? Clara shook her head. I don't know. He didn't show it to me. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away, and turned to the others. I shall inspect the library now. Captain Hastings, you will accompany me. The rest of you remain here. Sergeant Brooks, if you please, ensure no one disturbs the scene. The library, when Poirot and Hastings entered, was as they had left it the previous night, save for the absence of Vane's body, which had been moved to the local morgue under Brooks' supervision. The chalk outline of Vane's form remained, a grim reminder on the polished floor. The Cretan Bull statuette had been placed on a side table, cordoned off by the constable's orders. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on the heavy oak desk, the towering bookshelves, and the locked windows. Observe, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low. This room, it is a stage, meticulously set. The statuette, the body, the locked doors. It is all too perfect, no? Hastings frowned. Perfect? A man's dead, Poirot. It's chaos. No, mon ami. Poirot replied, tapping his temple. Chaos is an illusion. There is order here, if one knows where to look. Tell me, what did you notice about Monsieur Vane's hand last night? Hastings brightened, eager to contribute. There was ink on his fingers, Poirot, a smudge, as if he'd been writing, and his hand was clenched, like he was holding something. Précisément, Poirot said, moving to the desk. He examined its surface, his fingers tracing the edge of a blotter. A single sheet of paper, crumpled and tucked beneath a brass paperweight, caught Trent's nervous demeanor, Grayson's agitation, Mrs. Carver's relentless note-taking. Each seemed to hide something. And what of Lady Beatrice, whose composure seemed almost too perfect? Poirot, he ventured, do you think the statuette itself is the key? It's valuable, after all. Poirot shook his head. The statuette, it is a distraction, I think. A symbol, perhaps, but not the motive. No, this crime is personal. The killer knew Monsieur Vane, knew his habits, his secrets. We must learn more of these people, their hearts, their lies. They returned to the drawing room, where the guests waited under Sergeant Brooks's watchful eye. Poirot's presence seemed to tighten the air, as if each person felt the weight of his scrutiny. I shall begin my interviews, he announced. Mademoiselle Trent, if you please, we will speak first. In the study. Alone. Sylvia Trent paled, her handkerchief twisting in her hands. As she rose, Hastings caught a glance between her and Clara, a look of fear, or perhaps warning. Poirot, ever observant, noted it too, though his expression remained serene. Hastings, he said quietly as they moved toward the study. Watch their faces. The truth, it is not only in words, but in the eyes, the hands, the silences. We are only beginning to unravel the threads of this tapestry. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The study at Taurus Hall was a smaller, more intimate room than the Grand Library, its walls lined with oak panels and shelves of legal tomes, a testament to Sir Reginald Ashford's brief foray into politics. A single window overlooked the misty gardens, its light muted by the heavy drapes. Hercule Poirot sat behind a polished desk, his hands folded neatly, his eyes fixed on Miss Sylvia Trent, who perched nervously on the edge of a leather chair. Captain Skepticism. Seemed, mademoiselle? An interesting choice of word. Did you have doubts about his devotion? Sylvia's cheeks flushed. No, not exactly. It's just, Lawrence could be secretive. He didn't always share his thoughts, even with Clara. I wondered sometimes if he was entirely open with her. Secretive, Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. And last night, when you spoke to Mademoiselle Ashford at dinner, you said, "You must be careful. It's not safe." What did you mean by this? Sylvia's eyes widened, and she glanced at Hastings, who kept his expression neutral. I don't recall saying that precisely, she stammered. I was probably just worried about Clara. She's been so stressed with the engagement and her mother's expectations. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her gently. Mademoiselle, the truth. It is like a delicate thread. Pull too hard and it snaps. Speak plainly. What danger did you fear? Sylvia's lips trembled, and for a moment it seemed she might break down. Then she drew a shaky breath. I overheard Lawrence on the telephone 2 days ago, before the guests arrived. He was speaking to someone in London, sounding agitated. He mentioned a debt and something about the bull. I thought perhaps he was in trouble, financial trouble maybe. I didn't want Clara to be hurt. Hastings scribbled in his notebook, his mind racing. A debt. The Cretan Bull statuette. Could Vane have been involved in something unsavory? He glanced at Poirot, who remained impassive, though his eyes gleamed with interest. Merci, mademoiselle, Poirot said. And where were you at 5 minutes to 10 last night when the scream was heard? I told the sergeant, Sylvia replied, her voice steadier now. I was in the hall, admiring a portrait of Sir Reginald's drawing room, and dismissed any suggestion of discord with Vane. He was a suitable match for my daughter, she said coolly. His ambitions aligned with the Ashford legacy. I had no quarrel with him when pressed about the Cretan Bull. She admitted its value, but insisted it was locked in a safe until the unveiling. Only Phelps and I had access, she said, her eyes narrowing. Are you suggesting theft, Mr. Poirot? I suggest nothing, madame, Poirot replied smoothly. I observe. Dr. Felix Warrender, with his weathered face and eager manner, spoke at length about the statuette's historical significance, claiming it was a Minoan relic worth thousands. Sir Reginald acquired it from a private collector in Athens, he said, his enthusiasm undimmed by the circumstances. I examined it myself yesterday afternoon. A masterpiece. When asked about his whereabouts, he reiterated his alibi. Alone in the billiard room, studying a map of Crete. Mrs. Evelyn Carver was less forthcoming, her sharp wit tempered by wariness. I was in the conservatory, Mr. Poirot, plotting a novel. Murder mysteries are my specialty, but I assure you, I prefer to write them, not live them. Her alibi was unverified, as she had been alone, and Poirot noted her habit of clutching her notebook tightly, as if it held secrets of its own. Mr. Ronald Grayson, the stockbroker, was visibly agitated, his ruddy face glistening with sweat. I was in the smoking room as I told the sergeant, he snapped. Vane was a decent chap, but I barely knew him. This is a damned mess. When Poirot inquired about his investments in Ashford's shipping empire, Grayson bristled. My finances are my own business, sir. Finally, Phelps, the butler, maintained his stoic demeanor, confirming he was in the pantry at the time of the murder. I heard the scream and came at once, he said, his voice clipped, moved through the house with the cautious tread of those who sensed eyes upon them. Hercule Poirot, however, remained undeterred, his sharp mind cutting through the haze of suspicion as he and Captain Arthur Hastings reconvened in the study to review the morning's interviews. Hastings leaned against the desk, his brow furrowed. Poirot, there's something off about all of them. Sylvia's nervous, Grayson's defensive, and Mrs. Carver's far too calm for my liking. But that note, ST, it points straight to Sylvia Trent, doesn't it? She admitted to overhearing Vane's call about a debt and the bull. Could she be involved? Poirot, seated in the leather chair, adjusted his cuffs with meticulous care. Mon ami, you leap to the bait like a hungry fish. The initials ST, they are convenient, no? Too convenient, perhaps. In a puzzle such as this, the obvious is a red herring designed to distract. We must look beyond the surface. Before Hastings could reply, a knock at the door announced Sergeant Brooks, his face flushed with self-important zeal. Mr. Poirot, I've got something. One of the maids, Jenny, says she saw Miss Trent near the library at 9:30 last night. Not in the hall like she claimed. Sounds like we've got our suspect. Poirot's eyes gleamed, but his voice remained calm. And this maid, she is certain of the time? Swears it, Brooks said, puffing out his chest. Says she was carrying linens to the guest rooms and saw Miss Trent lingering by the library door, looking queer-like. Curieux, Poirot murmured. And what else did this Jenny observe? Nothing more, Brooks admitted. But it's enough to put Miss Trent in the frame. She had motive, maybe jealousy over Miss Ashford's engagement. And now we've caught her in a lie. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. Sergeant, I commend your diligence, but let us not arrest. Told us you were in the hall, admiring a portrait, at the time of the scream. Yet a witness places you near the library at 9:30. Can you explain this discrepancy? Sylvia's hands trembled, and she sank into a chair. I may have been mistaken about the time, she said, her voice faltering. I did pass by the library earlier, yes, but only for a moment. I heard voices, Lawrence's, I think, and another. I didn't want to intrude, so I moved on. Voices? Poirot's eyebrows rose. And could you identify this other voice? Sylvia shook her head. It was muffled. A man, perhaps, but I couldn't be sure. I swear, Mr. Poirot, I didn't go inside. I went to my room, then to the hall, as I said. Poirot studied her for a long moment, his gaze piercing. Merci, mademoiselle. You may go, but do not leave the house. As she fled, he turned to Hastings. She is frightened, yes, but of what? The truth, or the consequences of a lie? Brooks, impatient, interjected. She's our woman, Mr. Poirot. She lied about her whereabouts, and those initials, ST, they're damning. I say we bring her in for questioning. Poirot raised a hand. Patience, Sergeant. The initials, they are a lure, a distraction. Let us consider another possibility. The statuette, it was in the library, yet no one mentions seeing it moved after the unveiling. And the wax on the floor, where does it come from? These are the questions we must answer. Determined to test his theory, Poirot returned to the library, Hastings and Brooks trailing behind. The room was as they had left it, the chalk outline stark against the polished floor. Poirot knelt once more, examining the scuff mark and the trace of wax he had noted earlier. Hastings, he said, fetch me a magnifier. Whose secrets, and why did they lead to murder? As they pocketed the paper, Brooks coughed awkwardly. All right, Mr. Poirot, I'll hold off on Miss Trent for now. But this paper, it's evidence. We need to confront Grayson and Warrender Non, Poirot said firmly. We do not confront, not yet. We observe, we question. We let the guilty reveal themselves. The red herrings, they multiply. But the truth, it is like a star in the fog. It will shine through. As they left the library, Hastings couldn't shake the feeling that the ledger was only the beginning. Sylvia's lie, the wax, the hidden compartment, each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained maddeningly elusive. Poirot, however, walked with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the game was far from over. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The fog that enveloped Torres Hall showed no sign of lifting as the afternoon waned, its tendrils curling against the windows like ghostly fingers. Inside, the tension among the guests had grown palpable, their polite facades fraying under the weight of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a beacon of calm, his meticulous nature undeterred by the mounting complexity of the case. Captain Arthur Hastings followed him back to the study, the folded paper from the library's hidden compartment burning a metaphorical hole in Poirot's pocket. Seated at the desk, Poirot unfolded the paper once more, his green eyes narrowing as he studied the cryptic list. 10K to RG, 5K to FW, ST, nose. The ink matched the smudge on Lawrence Vane's fingers, confirming he had written it before his death. Poirot tapped the paper thoughtfully. This, Hastings, is no mere ledger. It is a map of motives, a key to the possible. Yet we must seek the context. Come, let us return to the library. There is more to discover. The library, still cordoned off by Sergeant Brooks's orders, was a silent witness to the previous night's horror. The chalk outline of Vane's body remained, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered Torres Hall's elegance. Poirot moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the room anew. He paused at the fireplace, where he had found the earring, and crouched to examine the hearth. "Observe, Hastings," he said, pointing to a faint smear of ash on the stone. "This is fresh, disturbed since last night. Someone stood here, perhaps watching, perhaps waiting." Hastings frowned. Waiting for Vane? But the room was locked, the windows secure. How could anyone have entered unnoticed? Poirot's gaze drifted to the bookshelves, then to the heavy oak door. "The door. It is the only entrance, oui? But doors, they have two sides. We have assumed the killer entered from the hall, but what if they were already here, hidden, when Vane arrived?" "Hidden?" Hastings echoed, glancing at the shelves. "You mean a secret passage?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not a passage, perhaps, but a space. This house, it is old, with secrets of its own." He approached the bookshelf where they had found the hidden compartment, his fingers tracing the wood. With a gentle press, another panel clicked, revealing a narrow alcove, just large enough for a person to stand. Inside, a single candle stub lay on the floor, its wax matching the pale smear Poirot had noted earlier. "Good Lord, Poirot!" Hastings exclaimed. "Someone was hiding here, waiting for Vane." They could have struck and slipped out before the scream was heard. "Précisément," Poirot said, retrieving the candle stub. "And this candle, it explains the wax on the floor." The killer needed light, but not from the lamps, which yesterday afternoon, Clara said. "I noticed it was missing when I dressed for dinner. I assumed it had fallen off in my room." How did it get to the library?" Poirot studied her closely, noting the tremor in her voice. "That, mademoiselle, is what I must discover. Tell me, did Monsieur Vane ever speak to you of debts or secrets involving others in this house?" Clara shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "No, never. Lawrence was private, but he loved me. He wouldn't keep such things from me."
Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. As she left, Hastings turned to him. Poirot, if Clara's telling the truth, someone took her earring to the library. To frame her, perhaps? Or to distract us, Poirot said, his voice low. The earring, the ledger, the candle, they are clues but also traps. The killer is clever, Hastings, weaving a web of misdirection. But Hercule Poirot, he does not stumble in webs. As they prepared to interview the others, a sudden commotion erupted in the hall. Sergeant Brooks burst into the study, his face flushed. Mr. Poirot, you better come quick. Grayson's just been caught trying to leave the estate, says he's got urgent business in London. Looked mighty suspicious, if you ask me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Urgent business at such a time. Most interesting. Let us see what Monsieur Grayson has to say. As they followed Brooks to the hall where Grayson stood, red-faced and argumentative, Hastings felt the pieces of the puzzle shifting. The earring, the candle, the ledger, each was a thread, but the pattern remained elusive. Yet Poirot's calm certainty reassured him. The truth, however hidden, was within reach. Chapter 7. More lies surface. The hall of Torres Hall was a flurry of agitation as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings arrived to find Mr. Ronald Grayson,
not the action of an innocent man. Grayson bristled, his voice rising. Innocent? I'm no murderer. Vane was nothing to me. A barrister with grand ideas, that's all. My business is my own, and I'll not be accused by some foreign detective. Foreign, perhaps, Poirot replied calmly. But the detective who sees what others miss. Tell me, Monsieur Grayson, what is this urgent business? And does it, perhaps, involve the £10,000 noted in Monsieur Vane's ledger? A gasp rippled through the onlookers. Grayson's face paled, then reddened anew. Ledger? What nonsense is this? I know nothing of any ledger. Poirot produced the folded paper from his pocket, holding it just out of reach. A curious document found in the library. It lists sums, 10,000 to R.G., 5,000 to F.W., and a note that S.T. knows. You are R.G., are you not? And what did Monsieur Vane know about you? Grayson's eyes darted to the paper, then to the faces around him. This is preposterous. I've no idea what Vane was scribbling. If he wrote my initials, it's a coincidence. I'm a stockbroker. Numbers and letters are my trade. Poirot's gaze remained steady. Coincidence, monsieur? Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidence. You will remain here, and we shall speak further. Sergeant Brooks, ensure Monsieur Grayson does not depart. Brooks nodded, his earlier smugness replaced by a grudging respect for Poirot's command. As Grayson stormed off to the drawing room, muttering under his breath, Poirot turned to Hastings. The net tightens, mon ami. But Grayson, he is not the only one with secrets. Let us speak with Dr. Warrender next. They found Dr. Felix Warrender in the billiard room, poring over his map of Crete as if the ancient trying to muddy the waters. Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone unreadable. But the waters, they are already murky. Tell me, what is so fascinating about this map? Warrender hesitated, then gestured to the parchment. It's a reproduction of a Minoan site on Crete, where artifacts hardship acts like the bull statuette were found. Sir Reginald consulted me before purchasing it. I was verifying its provenance. Poirot's eyes flicked to the map, noting a small pencil mark in the corner. A date, 1923, and the initials R.A. for Reginald Ashford. And did you find anything unusual in your studies? Warrender shook his head, too quickly. Nothing of note. Just history. Poirot dismissed him with a nod. But as Warrender left, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. That hesitation. It's as if he's afraid of what the map might reveal." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, examining the map himself. "And this mark, R.A. 1923. It is curious. Sir Reginald died 2 years ago, yet this map is not so old. We must learn more of this bull and its origins." As evening approached, Poirot requested a moment with Mrs. Evelyn Carver, whose sharp wit and constant note-taking had piqued his interest. She entered the study with a defiant air, her notebook clutched like a shield. "Mr. Poirot, I hope you don't think I'm your culprit. I write about murders, not commit them." Poirot smiled faintly. "Madame, your pen is mightier than a sword, perhaps. But tell me, what have you written in that notebook since last night? Observations, you said. May I see?" Mrs. Carver's grip tightened. "They're private, Mr. Poirot. Ideas for my next novel. Nothing relevant to this. Tragedy. Everything is relevant," Poirot countered. A single closer, and Hastings felt the weight of unseen truths lurking in the shadows of Torres Hall. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The evening at Torres Hall descended into a somber hush. The fog outside now so thick it seemed to muffle even the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The guests, confined to the drawing room under Sergeant Brooks's watchful eye, sat in strained silence, their nerves frayed by the day's revelations. Hercule Poirot, however, was undeterred, his mind a whirl of connections as he prepared to unravel another layer of the mystery surrounding Lawrence Vane's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, sensed a shift in the air. A moment where the carefully guarded facades of Torres Hall's inhabitants might finally crack. Poirot had requested a private audience with Clara Ashford, whose grief had been a quiet undercurrent throughout the investigation. She entered the study, her cream silk dress replaced by a somber gray gown, her auburn hair loosely pinned, as if she lacked the energy for her usual elegance. Her eyes, red-rimmed but resolute, met Poirot's with a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. "Mademoiselle Ashford," Poirot began, his voice gentle yet precise. "You have borne this tragedy with great strength. But Hercule Poirot senses there is more you have not shared. The earring found in the library. It is yours. The note, with its cryptic S.T. knows. It touches those close to you. I ask you now, for the sake of truth, what did Monsieur Vane confide in you about his fears or his enemies?" Clara's hands trembled, and she clasped them tightly in her lap. "Mr. Poirot, I've told you everything. Lawrence was private, yes, but he loved me. He spoke of no enemies, no debts, only his plans for our future." Her voice broke, and a single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, his tone softening, "this is most helpful. One more question. Your earring, lost before dinner. Did anyone have access to your room that afternoon?" Clara frowned, her brow furrowing. "Only the maids, I suppose. And Sylvia. She visited me while I dressed to help with my hair. But surely you don't think—" "I think only what the facts permit," Poirot interrupted gently. "You may go, but reflect, mademoiselle, on what you have not yet said. The truth, it waits for no one." As Clara left, her shoulders slumped, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's breaking, Poirot. That hesitation. She knows more than she's letting on, And Sylvia, always Sylvia. Could she and Vane have been closer than Clara admits? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Possibly, mon ami. But grief, it clouds the mind. Mademoiselle Ashford is torn between love and doubt. Her words, they confirm the web we have uncovered. Vane, the bull, the ledger, all intertwined. But now, we must stir the waters further. Poirot summoned the guests to the drawing room, his demeanor calm but commanding. The room with its heavy drapes and flickering fire seemed to close in around them, amplifying their unease. Lady Beatrice sat rigidly, her hands folded, while Sylvia Trent clutched her handkerchief, her eyes darting nervously. Dr. Warrender fidgeted with his cufflinks, Grayson glowered, and Mrs. Carver's pen scratched faintly, her notebook ever present. Phelps, the butler, stood by the door, his face a mask of neutrality. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, pacing slowly before the fireplace. A man is dead, and the truth, it hides among you. I have learned much today, of debts, of secrets, of a ledger that told me something, days ago. He said he'd discovered a secret about the bull statuette, something that could ruin someone here. He wouldn't say who, only that he had to act. I begged him to let it go, but he said it was too important. The guests stared, their expressions ranging from shock to suspicion. Clara's face crumpled, her voice barely audible. Sylvia, why didn't you tell me? I was afraid, Sylvia cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. He swore me to secrecy. I didn't know he'd be killed. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. Mademoiselle Trent, this secret, what was its nature? Speak plainly, for time is short. Sylvia shook her head, her voice trembling. He didn't tell me everything, only that the bull wasn't what it seemed, and someone in this house would kill to keep it hidden. I thought he was exaggerating, but now... Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Merci, mademoiselle. Your candor, it is a step toward the light. For now, we retire. But know this. The truth, it is close. And Hercule Poirot will not rest until it is revealed. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps heavy with dread, Hastings whispered, Poirot, Sylvia's confession. It's a breakthrough, isn't it? The bull, the secret, it's the heart of this. Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes distant. But a confession, it can also be a mask. We are close, Hastings, but the final thread eludes us. Tomorrow, we shall tighten the net. Chapter 9. The Trap. The morning at Taurus Hall broke with a reluctant sun, its rays piercing the fog to cast a pale light over the estate. The guests, summoned to the drawing room after a sleepless night, must review the facts. Monsieur Laurence Vane was stabbed in the library, a locked room, at 5 minutes to 10. A pearl earring, belonging to Mademoiselle Ashford, was found near the body. A ledger, in Vane's hand, listed sums owed to R.G. and F.W., with the note S.T. knows. A candle stub and wax on the floor suggest a hidden presence, and a secret alcove in the library reveals where the killer may have waited. And then, there is the Cretan Bull statuette, which Monsieur Vane believed held a secret worth killing for. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering on each face. Each of you has a piece of this puzzle. Mademoiselle Trent, you admitted Vane confided in you about the bull's secret. Monsieur Grayson, you argued with Vane about money, overheard by Madame Carver. Dr. Warrender, your obsession with the statuette raises questions about its true value. And Mademoiselle Ashford, your earring places you, or someone using your property, at the scene. But let us test these threads. Poirot produced the ledger, holding it aloft. This document, it speaks of debts, or perhaps blackmail. Monsieur Grayson, you deny knowledge of the £10,000 marked with your initials, yet you attempted to flee. Why? Grayson's voice was hoarse with anger. I told you, it's business. Nothing to do with Vane. If he wrote my initials, it's a mistake, or someone's framing me. Poirot turned to Dr. Warrender. And you, Doctor, with your £5,000. You claim academic interest in the bull, yet your map of Crete bears a mark from Sir Reginald, dated 1923. Curious, no? For a man who died 2 years ago. Warrender's face flushed. The map was a gift from Reginald. Return to the library, together, and reenact the moments before the murder. Each of you will take your place as you claim to be at 9:45 p.m. We shall see if the truth emerges. The guests exchanged wary glances, but none dared refuse. Led by Poirot, they filed into the library, the chalk outline of Vane's body a stark reminder of the crime. Poirot directed each to their stated position. Clara and Lady Beatrice near the drawing-room door, Sylvia in the hall, Warrender in the billiard room, Grayson in the smoking room, Mrs. Carver in the conservatory, and Phelps in the pantry. Hastings, acting as Vane, stood by the desk, while Poirot positioned himself near the alcove. Now, Poirot said, we imagine the clock strikes 9:45. Monsieur Vane enters the library, perhaps to write his letter or confront someone. The killer, hidden in the alcove, lights a candle. He mimes striking a match, his eyes scanning the group. The door's locked, the windows secure. The killer steps out, strikes, and vanishes. But how? As the reenactment unfolded, Hastings noticed Sylvia's hands trembling, her eyes fixed on the alcove. Grayson shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting to the door. Then, a small sound, a faint creak from the bookshelf, drew Poirot's attention. He moved swiftly, pressing the panel to reveal the alcove once more. Inside, a small brass key glinted, overlooked in their earlier search. Poirot held it up, his voice triumphant. The key to the library door, mes amis. Hidden where the killer stood. This is no coincidence. Someone locked the door after the murder to create the illusion of a sealed room. A gasp escaped Clara, and Grayson muttered under his breath. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he continued, the killer planned this crime with care. But they could not plan. Torres Hall was a crucible of tension. The morning light filtering through heavy drapes to cast long shadows across the assembled guests. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his small stature belied by the commanding presence that silenced the room. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near the fireplace, felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment Poirot had been building toward, the unveiling of the truth behind Lawrence Vane's murder. The guests, Lady Beatrice Ashford, Clara Ashford, Sylvia Trent, Dr. Felix Warrender, Mr. Ronald Grayson, Mrs. Evelyn Carver, and Phelps the butler, sat in a semicircle, their faces a gallery of apprehension and dread. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice steady and resonant. A crime has been committed in this house, a puzzle of great complexity. But Hercule Poirot has unraveled its threads. Today, I shall reveal the truth, step by step, using the little gray cells to bring order to chaos. He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes scanning each face. Let us begin with the scene. Monsieur Lawrence Vane, stabbed in the library at 5 minutes to 10, in a locked room. No weapon was found, yet a pearl earring, a candle stub, a hidden key, and a ledger pointed to secrets within this circle. Each clue, it was a thread, and together they form a tapestry of motive, opportunity, and deception. Poirot held up the pearl earring, its luster catching the light. This earring, belonging to Mademoiselle Ashford, was found near the body. She claims it was lost before dinner, yet it appeared in the library. A clue or a plant? We shall see. He produced the ledger next, its cryptic entries stark against the paper. This document, in Vane's hand, lists sums. 10. Your attempt to flee, and your argument with Vane, overheard by Madame Carver, suggest a motive. The ledger marks you for £10,000. Were you being blackmailed? Grayson's voice was hoarse. I told you I know nothing of that ledger. Vane and I argued about investments. He wanted in on a deal, but I refused. That's all. Poirot nodded, then faced Warrender. Dr. Warrender, your initials too appear in the ledger. Your obsession with the Cretan Bull statuette and the map marked by Sir Reginald suggest a deeper interest. Did Vane know something about your dealings? Warrender's face tightened. The map was a gift. I studied the bull for its historical value. If Vane wrote my initials, it's a lie, or a mistake. Poirot's gaze shifted to Sylvia. Mademoiselle Trent, you admitted Vane confided in you about a secret tied to the bull, something that could ruin someone. Your initials, ST, are in the ledger, and you were seen near the library. Did you act to protect that secret? Sylvia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't kill him. Lawrence trusted me, yes, but he only said the bull wasn't what it seemed. I didn't know what he meant. Poirot turned to Clara. And you, Mademoiselle Ashford, your earring places you, or someone using it, at the scene. You claim it was lost, yet it was found where Vane fell. Why? Clara's voice trembled. I don't know. Someone must have taken it. I was with Mama, I swear. Poirot's eyes gleamed, and he raised a hand for silence. Enough. The clues. They point to one truth, and it is this. The murder was not about the statuette's value, but its secret. The Cretan Bull. It is a forgery, a clever replica, created to deceive. Monsieur Vane discovered this, and it cost him his life. Finally, Poirot turned to Lady Beatrice, whose composure had shattered. Madame, you are the key. The bull was your husband's legacy, but its falsity would ruin the Ashford name. Vane, your future son-in-law, learned this from papers in the library, perhaps Sir Reginald's own records. He confronted you, threatening to expose the truth unless you paid. You could not allow this. You took Mademoiselle Clara's earring, knowing it would cast suspicion on her, and hid in the alcove with a knife from the dining room. You struck, locked the door, and hid the key, creating the locked room mystery. Lady Beatrice's voice was icy. This is outrageous. I loved Lawrence like a son. Poirot's voice was unyielding. No, madame. You loved your legacy more. The wax, the key, the earring all point to you. You dropped the earring in haste, and the shadow Madame Carver saw was yours, fleeing the scene. Clara cried out, "Mama, no!" Lady Beatrice's face crumpled, and she sank back silent. Poirot concluded, "The knife. It is hidden in this house, and a search will find it. The truth, it is clear." Sergeant Brooke stepped forward, his face grim. "Lady Beatrice, you'll come with me." As she was led away, the room dissolved into shocked whispers. Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression weary but satisfied. "The little gray cells. They do not fail, mon ami." Chapter 11. The Reflection. The drawing room at Taurus Hall, once a stage for Poirot's dramatic revelation, now lay steeped in a heavy silence, broken only by the faint crackle of the fire and the distant toll of the grandfather clock striking noon. The guests, still reeling from Lady Beatrice Ashford's exposure as Lawrence Vane's killer, had dispersed to their rooms, their faces etched with shock and sorrow. Clara Ashford, confrontation. The earring was a clever touch, wasn't it? Planting Clara's to throw suspicion on her own daughter. It's cold-blooded. Précisément, Poirot said, clasping his hands behind his back. The earring. It was a calculated misdirection, but it betrayed her. Only someone with access to Clara's room, someone intimate, trusted, could have taken it. And the key, hidden in the alcove, it was her mistake. She locked the door to create the illusion of a mystery insoluble, but she could not resist hiding the key where she stood, in her haste to escape. Hastings frowned, a lingering question nagging at him. But the ledger, Poirot, those sums to Grayson and Warrender, were they truly being blackmailed, or was that another red herring? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A question astute, Hastings. The ledger. It was both truth and deception. Monsieur Grayson, he was indeed in financial trouble, his investments tied to the failing Ashford empire. Vane, as a barrister, likely uncovered irregularities, perhaps not blackmail, but a warning to Grayson to repay or face exposure. Dr. Warrender, his role was smaller but no less guilty. He knew the bull was a forgery, having advised Sir Reginald on its acquisition. The 5,000 was likely a payment for his silence, recorded by Vane to pressure him. But neither was the killer. Lady Beatrice acted alone to protect her husband's legacy and her own power. Hastings shook his head, marveling. And Sylvia? Her initials, S.T. Nose, kept pointing to her. She seemed so frightened, so guilty. Oui, Poirot said, his tone softening. Mademoiselle Trent was a victim of her own loyalty. Vane confided in her, not fully, but enough to make her fear the consequences of his discovery. Her lie about her is a labyrinth. Pride, fear, ambition. They twist the soul. Lady Beatrice saw herself as the guardian of a legacy, not just of wealth but of honor. To her, the forgery of the bull was a stain that could not be borne. Vane, with his knowledge, became a threat she could not ignore. In her mind, she acted for Clara, for the Ashfords, even as she destroyed them. He paused, his voice softening. And yet, I pity her. To live with such a secret, to sacrifice so much for a name, it is a tragedy as great as the murder itself. Hastings sighed, the weight of the case settling over him. What happens now, Poirot? For Clara, for the others. Poirot adjusted his cuffs, a small gesture of order in the wake of chaos. For Mademoiselle Clara there will be grief, but also healing. She is young, and time, it is kind to the heart. The others, Grayson, Warrender, Madame Carver, they will carry their secrets, but they are not killers. Torres Hall will stand, but its shadows will linger. He moved toward the door, his step light but purposeful. Come, Hastings. Our work here is done. The train to London awaits, and Hercule Poirot, he has a craving for a cup of tisane, perfectly brewed. As they stepped into the hall, the fog outside had begun to clear, revealing the rolling lawns of Torres Hall in sharp relief. Hastings glanced back at the house, its grandeur now tainted by betrayal. "You know, Poirot," he said, "I'll never look at a quiet country weekend the same way again." Poirot chuckled, a rare sound of warmth. "Nor should you, mon ami. The quietest places, they hide the loudest secrets. But fear not. With Poirot by your side, no secret remains hidden for long." With that, they stepped that lingers when the puzzle seems complete. There is more to consider. Though the murder itself, it is solved. Lady Beatrice killed Monsieur Vane to protect her legacy. But the secrets of Torres Hall, they do not end with her. Hastings leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "You mean the bull statuette? Or the ledger? Do you think Vane was involved in something bigger?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The bull. It is a forgery, yes. But its significance goes beyond Lady Beatrice's pride. The ledger, with its sums and initials, suggests a network of secrets. Financial dealings, perhaps, that Vane uncovered. Monsieur Grayson's investments, Dr. Warrender's knowledge of the forgery, Mademoiselle Trent's partial awareness. These are not isolated threads, but part of a larger web. Hercule Poirot suspects that Torres Hall was a hub of deception, long before the murder. Hastings frowned, his mind racing. "You're saying Vane stumbled onto something, maybe a scheme involving Sir Reginald's estate. But why didn't you press the others further? Grayson and Warrender. They were clearly hiding something." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming. "Patience, Hastings. To catch a fish, one does not empty the entire pond. Lady Beatrice was the murderer, and her confession serves justice for Vane's death. But the other secrets, those of Grayson, Warrender, and perhaps even Madame Carver, they are not crimes, only shadows. To pursue them further would muddy the waters, and Poirot, he prefers clarity." Hastings shook his head, still unsatisfied. "But Sylvia Trent, she knew something about the bull. And that argument Mrs. Carver overheard between Vane and Grayson. It sounded serious. Could they be connected to the forgery?" Poirot nodded, "All coiled around that wretched bull. Do you think Clara knew any of this?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle Clara, she is innocent of the murder, but not of ignorance. She sensed Vane's unease, his distraction, but love blinded her to the depth of his discoveries. Her mother's actions, they have broken her heart, but they may also free her from a legacy of lies." The train whistle sounded, signaling their approach to London. Poirot sipped his tisane, his expression serene. "This case, Hastings, it reminds us that truth is not always a single note, but a chord, complex, resonant. Lady Beatrice's crime is resolved, but the shadows of Taurus Hall, they linger. We leave them to others, for our work is done. Hastings nodded, though his mind still churned. You're right, of course, but I can't help wondering, what happens to the Bull now? And Grayson and Warrender? Will they face justice? Poirot smiled faintly. The Bull, it will be examined, perhaps exposed as a forgery, and the Ashford name will bear the stain. As for Grayson and Warrender, their secrets may catch them in time, but that is not our concern. Justice, mon ami, is not always a courtroom. Sometimes, it is the weight of one's own conscience. As the train pulled into the station, Poirot rose, adjusting his hat with meticulous care. Come, Hastings. London awaits, and I have a longing for a quiet evening, perhaps with a book and another tisane. The little gray cells, they have earned their rest. Hastings followed, his heart lighter, but his mind still tangled with the unseen threads of Taurus Hall. Poirot's genius had solved the murder, but the echoes of deception, like the fog that had cloaked the estate, would linger long after they stepped onto the platform. Poirot. He knows when to close the book. The crime is solved, the guilty named. The rest, it is for others to pursue. Hastings frowned, unconvinced. But what about Clara? She's lost her fiancé, her mother's a murderer, and her family's legacy is tainted by that forged bull. And Sylvia, her fear, her half-truths. Could there be more to her role? And Mrs. Carver, always scribbling. Do you think she's hiding something bigger? Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. You ask many questions, Hastings, and they are good ones. Let us reflect. Mademoiselle Clara, she is a victim of her mother's pride, but she is young, resilient. The truth, though painful, will free her from a legacy built on lies. Mademoiselle Trent, her fear was genuine, born of loyalty to Vane and Clara. She knew of the bull's secret, but not its full extent. She was a confidant, not a conspirator. As for Madame Carver, her notebook, it is her shield and her weapon. She observes, she records, perhaps for her novels, perhaps for leverage. But a murderer? No, she is not. Hastings nodded slowly, his mind turning to the ledger. And the sums, Grayson and Warrender. You said they were part of a broader web. Could they be tied to something larger, something Sir Reginald started? Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of intrigue. A possibility, mon ami. Sir Reginald Ashford, he was a man of ambition, but not always of scruples. The bull, a forgery, was likely part of a scheme to bolster his failing empire. Perhaps sold to unsuspecting collectors, with Dr. Warrender's expertise to lend it authenticity. The 5,000 in the ledger, it was Warrender's price for silence. Monsieur Grayson, his investments tied to Ash surfacing. But our task was to solve a murder, and that, mon ami, is done. A knock at the door interrupted them. A messenger delivered a letter, addressed to Poirot in a neat, unfamiliar hand. He opened it, his eyes scanning the contents swiftly. Curieux, he murmured, passing it to Hastings. The letter was from Clara Ashford, written in a trembling script. Dear Mr. Poirot, I cannot thank you enough for uncovering the truth, though it has broken my heart. Mamma's actions. They are a wound I may never heal, but your clarity has given me strength to face the future. Sylvia has promised to stay with me, and we will rebuild what we can. The bull I have sent to the British Museum for examination. I want no more secrets in Taurus Hall. Your little gray cells have saved us, in a way. Yours in gratitude, Clara Ashford. Hastings set the letter down, his throat tight. Poor girl. She's got courage, hasn't she? Oui, Poirot said, his voice tinged with warmth. Courage, and a heart that seeks the truth. She will endure, Hastings, as the honest always do. Poirot rose, adjusting his cuffs with his usual precision. Come, mon ami. The night is young, and I have promised myself a quiet evening with a good book. The echoes of Taurus Hall, they will fade. But the truth, it remains forever. Hastings followed, his mind still turning over the case, but comforted by Poirot's certainty. The train had carried them away from Taurus Hall, but the lessons of its secrets, of pride, betrayal, and redemption would linger, a quiet echo in the heart of London's bustling night. Chapter 14. The Shadow of Secrets. The soft glow of lamplight filled Hercule Poirot's Whitehaven mansion's flat, casting long shadows across the polished surfaces of his meticulously arranged furniture. It of lingering. Like perfume in an empty room, Hastings sank into an armchair, his brow furrowed. It's Clara I worry about. She's lost so much. Her fiancé, her mother, her family's honor. And Sylvia, too. She knew something about the bull's secret, but she's caught in the middle. Do you think they'll be all right? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of thoughtful consideration. Mademoiselle Clara. She is wounded, oui, but she is strong. Her decision to send the bull to the British Museum, it is a step toward truth, a rejection of her mother's deception. Mademoiselle Trent, her loyalty to Clara will guide her. They will support each other, and in time, they will heal. The heart, it is resilient, even when broken. Hastings nodded, but his mind drifted to the ledger. And what about Grayson and Warrender? You said their secrets might catch up with them. Do you think Vane's investigation, his notes about the bull and the sums, could lead to more trouble for them? Poirot leaned back, his green eyes gleaming in the lamplight. A question perspicace, Hastings. The ledger. It was Vane's attempt to chart a sea of deceit. Monsieur Grayson. His financial ties to the Ashford Empire were precarious. Perhaps he falsified records to hide losses, a crime Vane uncovered. Dr. Warrender. His knowledge of the bull's forgery made him complicit, a scholar who traded integrity for profit. The 10,000 and 5,000 in the ledger. They were likely payments or demands Vane recorded to pressure them. But without Vane to pursue it, and with Lady Beatrice's crime overshadowing all else, their secrets may remain buried, unless another, perhaps a barrister or an investigator, takes up the trail. Hastings' eyes widened. You mean someone like Mrs. Carver? She's been writing everything down. Could she be planning to cells? They suggest he is a witness, not a culprit. Hastings sighed, rubbing his temples. It's maddening, Poirot. You've tied up the murder, but there's so much left unanswered. The Ashford legacy, it's crumbling, and all those secrets, will they ever be fully exposed? Poirot rose, adjusting his cuffs with his usual precision. The world, Hastings, it is full of secrets, and not all are meant to be uncovered. The murder of Lawrence Vane, it was a crime of passion and pride, and that crime is solved. The broader web, the forgery, the finances, the silent complicities, these are for others to untangle, perhaps in time. Hercule Poirot, he does not chase every shadow, only those that cast a deadly light. He moved to the sideboard, pouring a second cup of hot chocolate with deliberate care. Come, mon ami. Let us leave Torres Hall to its ghosts. Tonight we dine at Simpson's, and we shall speak of lighter things, perhaps the virtues of a well-roasted beef, or the art of a perfect soufflé. Hastings chuckled, his tension easing. You're incorrigible, Poirot. But you're right. We've done our part. Clara and Sylvia will find their way, and the rest, well, time will tell. As they stepped into the cool London night, the city's hum enveloped them, a stark contrast to the stifling silence of Torres Hall. The case was closed, but the echoes of its secrets lingered, a reminder that even in Poirot's world of order, some truths remained just beyond the light. Chapter 15. The Final Note. The dining room at Simpson's in the Strand was a haven of warmth and clatter, its polished tables and gleaming silver a world away from the shadowed halls of Torres Hall. Hercule Poirot sat opposite Captain Arthur Hastings, his knife slicing through a perfectly roasted beef with the precision of the ledger. Those sums to Grayson and Warrender and St. knows. You said it hinted at a broader scheme, perhaps tied to Sir Reginald's empire. Could there be others involved? People we didn't see? And what about Mrs. Carver? Her notebook? Could she be planning to expose it all? Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the table, a rhythm of thought. Madame Carver, she is a chronicler of human folly. Her notebook, it holds truths, but whether she will wield them as a weapon or weave them into fiction, only time will tell. As for the ledger, it was Vane's map of deceit, a record of financial misdeeds, perhaps involving Monsieur Grayson's investments and Dr. Warrender's complicity in the Bull's forgery. Sir Reginald, he was the architect, using the fake antiquity to bolster his failing empire. Vane, with his barrister's acumen, uncovered this, and it sealed his fate. Hastings frowned, his mind turning to Clara. And Clara, what becomes of her? She's lost everything, her fiancé, her mother, her family's honor. Will the truth about the Bull help her, or bury her deeper? Poirot's expression softened, a rare warmth in his eyes. Mademoiselle Clara, she is a soul of courage. Her letter, it shows her resolve to face the truth, to send the Bull to the British Museum for scrutiny. The Ashford name, it will suffer, but she will rise above it, with Mademoiselle Trent at her side. The truth, it is a heavy burden, but also a liberation. She will rebuild Hastings, as the honest always do. Hastings nodded, but a final question gnawed at him. And Phelps, the butler, he was always there, silent, watching. You said he might have seen more than he admitted. Could he have been part of the scheme? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of amusement. Monsieur Phelps, he is the perfect servant, preparing to leave Torres Hall for a time. I must confess, I knew more than I said. Lawrence hinted at a fraud, not just the Bull, but something deeper in the Ashford finances. I kept silent to protect Clara, but I see now that truth is our only path forward. Thank you for showing us that. Yours sincerely, Sylvia Trent. Hastings set the note down, his heart heavy. She knew more, just as you suspected. Poor Sylvia, caught between loyalty and truth. Oui, Poirot said, his voice soft. But her confession, it is a step toward peace. The echoes of Taurus Hall, they will fade. And these women, they will find their way. As they finished their meal, Poirot rose, his movements precise. Come, Hastings. The night is ours. And London, it offers many delights. Let us leave the shadows of Taurus Hall behind and seek the light of a new day. Hastings followed, his mind quieter now, though the case's echoes lingered. Poirot's genius had brought clarity to a murder, but the broader secrets of Taurus Hall, its forged treasures and hidden sins, would remain. A final note in a melody only time could resolve.